Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner University podcast. I am your host, Paul O'Neid, and today our podcast is brought to you by Coach's Corner University. Use code podcast300 and save $300 off of our continuing education platform, the Coach's Corner U Education Collective. That's almost 200 hours of continuing education lectures, as well as discounts on our courses for $50 and lifetime access. We're also sponsored by TC Nutrition, Barefoot Shoes, and Bacon and Barbells. You can find links to those companies and the discount codes below. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined with Strongman competitor and coach Chad Coy. Chad's a graduate of Purdue University, where he studied exercise phys and nutrition, currently serves as the director of affiliate development for the Parisi Speed School, as well as a master coach and educator for the network, and he owns Strength Captain, an online training service focused on strongman and strongwoman. Chad, welcome to the podcast, my man.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
It's my absolute pleasure. So, Chad, you were referred over to me by Anthony Castor, and to be fair, I love these podcasts because this is the first time Chad and I are having a conversation. So it's my opportunity to learn about Chad, about his journey to get to where he is, and as someone who clearly has a very deep resume, I'm excited to get to know you. So, how did you get to where you are today, working with Parisi?
Well, that's a long story. Well, just to give it some preface, I started training in 1980, so that's
Okay.
before a lot of your listeners were probably born. I just got into weight training. To be honest with you, my mom took me to the movies and I saw Conan the Barbarian.
Nice.
And I told my mom, I'm like, I want to look like that. And so she's like, okay. She took me to there was a local YMCA.
Mm-hmm.
There was a local Y that had a Nautilus Center inside of it. So it's the Nautilus Center. And she took me to the Nautilus Center and I started training Nautilus when I was 12. And I just fell in love with it, not knowing, I didn't know anything. I mean, I picked up, when I had enough money to buy magazines, so I bought like Muscle and Fitness and Flex and Muscular Development, and I just read them. And then I bought the Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, and everything I did was literally self-taught. And then there were some guys at the gym that I went to school with that helped me, and then there was guys then I went to the YMCA and learned that, and just started training, just trying to make myself a better athlete. And I thought bodybuilding and that was the way, which obviously as an athlete, it's not. But at the time I was just doing what I knew to do. And I was reading books. I read. And hell, I was training twice a day, going for runs, eating I laugh now as a prepubescent girl is how I ate because I was afraid I'd get fat. And I didn't want to get fat, not eating enough and training probably too much. And there's a lot there. Then, I was the first person in my family to go to college. So when I went to college,
cool.
I didn't know what the hell I wanted to go to school for. My girlfriend's parents encouraged me to go into law. So you like to argue and you like history and you can write. So do that. I was like, this sucks. I hate it. So I switched my major to movement sport science is technically the name of the major. Okay. Movement sport at the time. Now it's exercise physiology, movement sport science and dietetics. So I wanted to learn about nutrition and how does nutrition play into performance and there's a lot you can do with nutrition and then how do you train? And it gave me a great science background, but really didn't teach me anything. I mean,
I would agree,
nutrition professors were these 5'4", 250-pound women telling me that, eating that much protein is going to ruin your kidneys, son. And I'm like, the research isn't there. Like, well, it will. I'm like, why? Because you
can tell the future.
Yeah. Well, I just kind of looked at eat the way you're eating or eat the way I'm eating. I kind of like the way I look better than the way you look. So maybe that was anecdotal, but then I went to work for a chiropractor who had a nutrition store. I learned a ton from Dr. Thayer. I laugh because you bring up Anthony. Anthony was a client of mine when I was a senior in college, and he was just
he told me
snot-nosed little kid in the gym. He was just tiny. He wanted to start training. It's like, dude, I'll train you. And I loved it because I could just pound him and just made him eat whatever. Like literally, we had to find ways of just getting the calories in. So he went from like 125 pounds to like 185 pounds in 2 semesters, and got leaner. That's awesome. The crazy thing. He was like 15% body fat in the beginning at 125 pounds, and he's 185 pounds at like 11% body fat. It's crazy. But he was willing to do anything, like whatever I told him to do. He was like the gospel, which I kind of laugh because, like, I trained at that time was more high intensity.
Mm-hmm.
like the Ellington Darden Arthur Jones camp. I kind of fell in that camp, and it works. I mean, I think everything works, just for how long.
Right.
Uh, Trained him, fed him, he grew, he learned. I want to say this. I just give Anthony all the props because, man, that kid he's brilliant, he's intelligent,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and he's ruthless in his execution of education. He has just dived into it.
His
And
podcast is one of the most downloaded podcasts that we've had for
yeah,
sure.
it's just talking to him. He's a wealth of knowledge, and it's like I laugh because I've got so many kids that I've coached that are now just wildly successful. So I kind of look at my coaching lineage as
Mm-hmm.
you look at all those, Nick Saban coaches, so
Yep.
I've got a lot of coaches in my down tree that have become incredible coaches. And he's probably one of the first,
Mm-hmm.
because that was 30 plus years ago,
Right.
and he's just phenomenal. So that's kind of how I got started. Stuck around, did about 2 years as an undergraduate assistant for Purdue Strength and Conditioning.
Okay.
Learned a lot there from Coach Little. He was my boss, and Trent Greener. He was the graduate assistant then. Great people, learned a lot. Got kicked out in the real world. Didn't get applied for my master's. Didn't get it. Didn't get the assistantship, so I couldn't afford to go back to school. So I took a real job, and I went to work for a nutrition company. And that nutrition company was Palco Distributing. I met him when I was at the nutrition store for Dr. Thayer. And they service gyms all over the Midwest. So I took a job there, traveling. And really how I got into it is like my ex-wife now, my wife then, her degree's in management, and was like, we want to have our own facility, our own business someday. So I went to work for the distributor, just going into all these gyms and just seeing hundreds and hundreds of gyms. And I was like, I think we can do this. So we wrote a business plan in 1994. In 1995, we opened our first gym, Powerhouse Gym of Kokomo, Indiana. It was small, it's 8,500 square feet. But every time I'd come in the gym and I'd just see a kid, it's like, I just wanted to help these kids because, like, I didn't know anything. I was clueless.
Mm-hmm.
And hell, I'm going to be honest, at the time, I'm like 25, 26 years old. I was still fucking clueless. I mean, it's just clueless. I knew some stuff, but I was not
but
where I was
at the
today.
time, you think you know everything.
Yeah, you thought you knew something. And again, I think I knew more than most people, but I didn't know that much. But anytime a kid would come in, it's like, I just wanted to find time to train them because I wanted them to attain the goals that they had.
Right.
But no one taught me, and I figured I could give back. So I kept my job with Palco. Then when I finally left that job and took a job with Human Development Technologies, actually working in research and development of supplements, and just and that's when the online started to start, like the internet or the social media and stuff. I don't know. I can't remember the timelines. They're so long ago, but I went to work there. When I left that job and we'd had the gym and we were doing personal training, and I knew that job was coming to an end. So I just upped our personal training and grew that business to like $500,000.
Oh, wow.
And I just kept seeing, because my daughter was getting older, and like I just kept seeing the disparity of what kids were getting.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, I can do this. I can be a strength and conditioning coach for these kids. But like, well, how do you coach kids? How do you scale a 7-year-old? I mean, I know how to coach high school and college kids. That's kind of easy. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
It's in strength, not in so much speed. So we saw the Parisi Speed School, and I met Bill. It was about a 6 months process of vetting me because I had a lot of questions. And in 2006, we executed our deal with the Parisi Speed School, opening the 13th franchise. And it was at that point in my life that I kind of, you're always searching for what gets you rolling. It's like I was helping people, I was making money, the gym was doing well, but like when I started training kids, man, it's like I just find out why I was created.
Mm-hmm.
Really, coaching kids was really it was a game changer. So
Yeah.
I just fell in love with the process, and how do you make a kid faster and stronger and less likely to get hurt and more confident, and just giving them the tools to live their dreams. And that's kind of how I got sucked into Parisi. And then in 2014, I went through a divorce, but then I started down the Parisi trail as a master coach.
Mhm.
and I haven't looked back. I mean, now I get to coach coaches. Those coaches get to help more kids, and the mission is really to empower the kids of this country. And that's our company mission, is just really empowering kids and building their self-esteem and self-confidence through proper training. And the longer I'm in Parisi, like I laugh because I've been wearing the same uniform for almost 20 years. And
Mhm.
I can't, I mean, you can see my hat,
Yeah.
everything's Parisi, my bag's Parisi, everything's Parisi. Like if you go in my closet, everyone like goes in my closet, they look at my closet like, yes, do you have anything but Parisi clothes? Or is any color outside red and black in your, and not really. I've got a
No.
few colored shirts, but everything is pretty much just the same uni. So now that I'm working for a corporate, still wear the same uniform, but now I'm in sales, business development, and then education. So still doing what I want. I do miss coaching. I've been out of coaching physically now for about 4 months. It still drives me nuts. So I do have my online, but that's not the same as hands on.
Yeah.
So I just love the hands on. I love the process, but most of all, like now it's like, as you get a little older, I kind of laughingly say I'm in the back half of the third quarter of my life. I'm 56. Do I want to be going out on the turf at 6 a.m. and coming home at 7 p.m.? There's a huge part of me that still would do that.
Right.
But now it's like I'm helping other people open their facilities so they can coach their coaches and help more kids. So I think in the grand scheme of things, the mission is the same. It's just not inside four walls. Now it's literally across the planet, because I deal with companies all over the country, all over the world. And then I've got clients all over the world with my online business.
Hmm.
But I just love coaching. I love helping people. And, you know, I love the process. I think that's what I probably fall in love with the most.
One of the coolest things for me when I hop on podcasts with people I don't know is how much the mission of the high achieving coach resonates with my own. You mentioned you found your purpose when it came to training kids, and the goal was to allow them the vehicle of strength and conditioning as a means for personal development and something that they can build on for the rest of their life. That's our same mission here. And I've worked with youth athletes for many years before I went to the college world, and there's just something special about working with that young person, right? They're at a stage in their life where they're so malleable, and you can
Yeah.
set that trajectory for so much positivity for the rest of their life, bring them out of bad situations, give them the tools that they need. It is truly special. But you can see as your career has progressed, your impact has grown, right? Even though you're not dealing one-on-one with kids anymore, you're dealing with the people who deal one-on-one with kids. So instead of being a one-to-one impact, now it's a 1-to-1 to 50 or 1-to-1 to 100, and that, to me, that's kind of, again, the trajectory that my career has followed, going from coaching now into mentorship and education. You're just expanding the reach of that impact when you scale in that manner.
I 100% agree. As a coach, like I just got back from official strongman last weekend where there was 400 plus athletes,
Oh,
and I
wow.
had I had 8 athletes in the show. So I'm coaching all day, but it's like I just love the coaching, And then, like, as far as strongman and my online business, the only reason I did strongman as an on I did strongman as a sport, and I was very
Yeah, those are gonna be my next question, is like, how does strong men play into this?
well. I mean, strongman came in. You can't play football forever. So, after college, I played semi-pro for like the next 7 years, but then, I would do powerlifting in the off season. I just got to
Okay.
throw one out to Greg Gordon, one of my dear friends. He was one of my first accounts when I was at Palco. His gym was Gordon's gym in Washington, Illinois. And I came in and I dropped off some samples and stuff. He goes, dude, and I trained at his gym. He saw me squatting. He goes, you ever think about powerlifting? I go, what's that? And that's how ignorant. So he's like, dude, and he starts telling me about it. He's a great powerlifter. And it's like, so that was 92. So I did my first meet in 93. I remember it was the NASA Indiana's, because it just fit perfect in my off season of football. And, I squatted 683, benched like, I don't know, 375,
Jesus.
pulled 583 in my first meet. And I was like, which I didn't know anything about it. Like, I go to this meet, it's kind of funny because it's a drug-free meet. I go, I'm using the bathroom. I hear these dudes out there talking about, yeah, I'm taking Anadrol, I'm taking D-ball, I'm taking tests. And I come out of the bathroom, I was going to the bathroom. So I come out and I'm like, guys, I thought this is a drug free meat. And they look at me because I'm 23 years old. I'm just a kid. These are
Yeah.
like grown men that are in their 30s and shit. So I'm like, I'm just ignorant. I just don't know anything. I'm like, the guy's like, shut up, idiot. You know, we're here to win. You win at any cost. And I'm sitting there like, I'm walking out going, but it's a drug free meat. You're kind of cheating.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I just didn't let it affect me. I just went out and did my shit. I didn't realize they were both in my class and I beat them.
That's the best. That's the
And it's like, it was my
best.
first meet. I'd never done anything. I had no idea. I mean, to be honest with you, I had bought the equipment and I was working a trade show in Denver. And I was actually, the first time I put on a squat suit or a bench shirt was by myself with help from dudes at the gyms. They had no idea how to get this shit on.
Right.
And I squatted at, a mile high and because we were actually skiing. We finished the trade show and went skiing, but I didn't go skiing. I went to train.
Yeah.
So I tried to get all this equipment, and that was like, again, that was a week out from this powerlifting meet. So
Oh
I'm
man. And
a week,
listen, you got kids now who won't even squat if they don't have an ER rack.
right. And like, whatever. And that's kind of how I got my start in powerlifting. And then as I kept looking at, and I loved powerlifting. And then we did football, so I would powerlift. As soon as football was over, I'd get right back in the gym and training and get powerful and strong. I didn't run enough. I mean, in retrospect, I look now as a performance coach. I should have been sprinting the whole time, but I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the evolution comes. So I kept in it, and it's like I saw Strongman as a kid, like on
Mm-hmm.
Wild World of Sports, and Bill Kazmaier and Franco Columbu and Lou Ferrigno and all these guys. I'm like, that's so cool. I want to do that. And I just didn't know where. And I got Iron Mind, and I contacted Randy Strauss on Iron Mind, and he told me about a
Yeah.
show, but it was too far away. So I'm like, well, fuck it. We'll just put on our own show. So we started the Central USA Strongman Challenge in 1994, which started out as a bench press, deadlift, and a farmer's walk. That's all
That's
it was. It was
I would do really well at that.
So it was cool. And then the next year we added another event, and then we added another event, and then it just grew and grew and grew. And the more I got in, I just loved strongman because you were athletic.
Right.
Like I met Ed Cohn, and Ed's a dear friend of mine, one of the nicest guys on the fucking planet.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
He's just, I mean, I just love Eddie. He's cool. And got to hear from him and talk to him. And then I met Louis Simmons. And then when we opened the gym, like I bought a bunch of equipment from Louis. And it was funny because someone says, what are some of the stories? I said, I would literally call, because back then you just call the number, and it was his house.
Yeah.
And his wife would answer, goes, Louis, it's Chad from Kokomo again. Because I would call over and just like, because he would just he would take questions.
Yeah.
And I was literally like, like I couldn't get enough. I would call, like I felt like a pain in the ass, And then I saw Lou at one of the Arnolds, one of the first Arnolds I was at, and he's like, and he has that little talk, kind of
Oh
like
yeah.
this. It's like he goes, we were talking, he goes, you should give up strong, man. That's a stupid ass sport. You should be doing powerlifting. You'd be afraid to do powerlifting. You need to go up to like 308. I'm like, dude, I can't. This body ain't holding 308. Oh yeah, it will. So I just didn't want to do that. I said, Lou, I respect you and I love it. I'm going to use everything I learned from you and kind of mold it into my own system for strongman. And he said he respected that and he was cool with it. I still think you'd be a real good powerlifter. You've got all the talent. You could do this. I'm like, but my heart had already gone to strongman because being an athletic,
Yep.
I could make up for my lack of strength being athletic in loading events. But building the strength, building the power, that just takes time. And that's
sure.
all it was for me. And that's kind of how I got into strongman. And then there was the American Federation of Strength Athletes was having the qualifier for World's Strongest Man in '98. So my training partner at the time was Doug Art. He's like 6'8", 425 pounds.
So
Huge.
just a little guy. Yeah.
Tiny guy. Never beaten him in anything. So he's going to do it. I'm like, well, I'll just go with you and we'll just do it together. And I end up making the finals and getting my pro card. And I was like, what the fuck happened? Like I'm out there with like, hey, that's Gary Mitchell. He was in Worlds last year. Hey, that's Terry Brennan. He was in Worlds last year. That's Chief Iron Bear. He was in Worlds last year. I'm competing against guys that had been to Worlds. I'm like, I was just dumb, didn't know any better. And I just went out and just, I'm just kind of one of those guys that I don't quit. And I just laid it all on the line and
100%.
ended up making the finals. And that's kind of how Strongman started. And after that, I was like, okay, I'm ready to give up football.
Yep.
And I'm going to chase this because like, I remember seeing that. I was like, I'd love to be on World's Strongest Man. And like, I'd done the local shows that we put on, but now it's my first big show. And I'm like, hey, I'm not bad at this. And then I
Hmm.
just kind of went all into strongman. Still kept my powerlifting roots. I didn't change that. Um, but went into strongman, and then I mean, I'd say for what I had, I was successful as the alternate to world's strongest man in 2001 for the United States.
Yep.
I was blessed to be the team captain of several teams for the United States, going to all nations and going to North Americans. And I got to compete all over the world. I had sponsors that were paying me. I competed a lot, and I just loved it. And then as I got older, it's like, well, I wasn't so much older, but at the time I was just accumulating people at the gym, and then we just kept getting more and more pro cards and national championships. Like, okay, I can coach this stuff. And then I never really thought about online training till, like, honestly, like 2017. I was on a meet and this kid goes, "Hey, could you train me?" I'm like, "Dude, you live in Iowa. I live in Illinois." He goes, "Yeah, but can you program me?" I'm like, "Can you train me?" So I started it, Excel spreadsheets and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, I can do this. And like, so I picked up a few clients here, a few clients there. And I never really thought I'd be the online guy. And then another person asked me, and another person asked me. And then Parisi got trained heroic, which made my life so much easier because I can outdo it all online.
Hmm.
And that's kind of where the online stuff came, was just in strength captain. And strength captain was kind of a joke because we were looking at, I went to the strength master because I was an old guy.
Yeah.
But the domain name was taken, and I'm a huge Captain America fan. So
Okay.
strength captain, it's a shield. It's kind of cool. And I'm like, fuck it, we're going. And I found it. It was like, I got the domain name, and that became the business. And then it's just, I come across kids that need help, and I'm able to help them because I've been through that stages of my life,
Hmm.
and I've been at that level. I know what it's like to have to travel and compete and carry your food and do all that stuff. So I just started putting it out there, and you know, I've got I got 4 or 5 high level guys, but most of my people they just want to compete. And
Hmm.
like, I've got a lot of knowledge. Now, the other thing at the time is, like, then coaching masters. Unless you're an older athlete, you haven't been through that. So I think that's nothing against younger coaches, because I think they're very capable. But if you're in your 20, if you're 25 or 35 years old, you don't know what's going on in a 50-year-old body. I think that's where I give unique perspective from both an age, and then having lived through all those through my 20s, 30s, 40s, and now in my
Hmm.
50s. So it's just a different perspective. And I think when I coach, it's more about helping them be the best version of themselves, whether that's physically or, I got a lot of people, I got to change their programs on daily because of stuff going on in their life. It's like, I'm a dad.
Hmm.
I'm older, so I've lived through that, so I can adjust to that. It's like, dude, it's no big, like this morning, dude, no big deal. It was not a big deal,
Yeah.
and like today, it's like with one of my clients text me, "Hey, can you adjust this?" Yeah, no big deal. And so I think that's where the business is. I keep it small because I keep 20 clients. That's it. I've thought about blowing it up, but then it just takes the personal out of it. And I like being able to get on the phone and talk to people and talk through their stuff. And when I can, go to their contests. Like this last weekend at OSG, and I got to be there and help all my athletes. It was, and I had a lot of friends I got to help. It was just awesome, just being able to give back. So I look at the sport that's given me so much, and I just want to continue to give back to the sport. But then as far as training, I just want to give back to just build people up and help people. I mean, that's the difference. And know that at the end of your days, that your existence actually made a difference in the world.
So there's a few points that I want to kind of pull out of that. The first one being, most of the people that I speak to who coach online and in person, they eventually see the lucrative nature of online coaching, and they kind of just think, okay, well, if I can make this much money online in this much time, why do I need to coach in person? When you were building the online and it started to grow organically, what was the thought process there between, well, why don't I just go all the way online? Why did you stay with the in-person kids coaching?
Well, number one, I love kids,
Hmm.
and I don't really coach any kids online. I love just the visceral nature of coaching. It's just, there's just a feeling of it. There's just an enjoyment of it. There's the enjoyment of seeing a kid's light bulb go on. Coaching adults is fairly easy. They're set in their ways. you can teach them some new stuff, but kids are just so malleable and so ready to learn. Um, and again, I don't know. I'm a dad, so I always laugh because it's like every session becomes a life lesson.
Right.
And I've got a lot of life lessons to give. So it's like coaching in person. I just love the in person, and it's not about the money, dude. I mean, if I really want to make money, I'd go. I'd be a drug. I'd sell medical devices and make shitloads of money because I can sell anything. I
Hmm.
I'm not here. I want to make a difference. The money itself, I think if you do a good job, your money takes care of itself. And I love what I do with Parisi. I mean, Bill pays me well. I'm
Hmm.
compensated well. And then my online business, I just want to do a good job. Um, I want to do a great job. I want to be. I always look at it. Martin Rooney's one of my mentors, and it's like MPE, meet the expectation. He goes, do you want to meet someone's expectation, or do you want to deliver more than expected?
Right.
And I constantly want to over deliver and deliver more than they expect. And that's why I keep my stable at 20. I don't want more than 20. Could I do more? I'd have to quit my real job if I want to do more. And maybe that's something I do in the future, from a monetary standpoint.
Hmm.
But if I can't deliver the quality of training and the quality of care, I just wouldn't do it.
That
There's no
speaks to
amount of money
integrity.
worth it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that speaks to integrity. I mean, as my business has changed and as I've dove more into the education and mentorship side, I purposefully downgraded how many clients I carry because I refuse to allow the quality of my coaching to suffer. Like I'm in the same vein as you where the relationship that I can build with somebody, the impact that I can have on them, the care that I can communicate to them within the coaching process is so much more important to me than how many people I can carry and how much money I can make.
Right.
Like that's
Yes.
so,
I mean,
you were faced with a decision where you're like, yeah, I probably could make more money online, but I love doing this. I love the impact that I'm having. So this is what I'm doing. And if I can supplement my income with some online coaching, great.
100%. Like money's not. I know how to make money. Money's never a problem. I've got plenty. My retirement's taken care of. All my kids are out of the house. You know, I want in this last portion of my life just to continue to make a difference. The money, I'm not so much worried about. I mean, I don't really care about it. I don't want to say I don't care. I mean, if I won the lottery today,
It'd be
I'd still
sweet.
do the same. I do the same thing I'm
Yeah,
doing now. I
exactly.
just
Y-
I'd be doing it from a beach somewhere. You know,
Yeah, you'd still be coaching, you'd still be educating, you'd just be probably not where you are in Indianapolis or Indiana. Yeah.
I'm actually in Shelby Township, right outside of Detroit.
Okay. All right.
So
Well,
we,
even worse.
I will say this is better. I will say there's a lot better food here, though.
Yeah, that's true.
There's
Detroit does have pretty good food.
there's some good food.
Um, Tell me a little bit about how your early influence and this we'll get into a little bit of X's and O's here because strongman training is something that's always fascinated me. I've never done a show, but I have done a lot of strongman training in my past. I always made it a priority when training the athletes that I was working with that we would have strongman elements in our training, especially like odd object carries, dynamic movements while under load. I think the carryover to sport is just phenomenal. How has your influence in terms of like powerlifting, Louis Simmons conjugate, and then also the speed development, athletic training, have you brought both of those in together within your strongman philosophy for coaching?
Yeah, because you look at my warm up as very much an active, dynamic warm up. So
Hmm.
we build in some movement mechanics in there. It depends on the athlete.
Okay.
Um, Building in movement mechanics because strongman requires movement. I mean, you got to have brutal power in a 1RM, but then you also have to be able to do reps. So that's a different type of training. And then as far as from a movement standpoint, how mobile are you between implements? That's number one. And you look at like moving events like yoke or farmers or frame or bags, what's your foot speed look like? So when you look at like something like a farmer's walk or a yoke walk, I tend to oscillate between kind of stealing from the conjugate method or from what I learned from Louis and Westside was, you've got dynamic effort and max effort, you got circumax, but then you're looking from a movement standpoint and a conditioning standpoint is what I look at. So I build them together when you're looking like say short run farmers walks with very low rest periods. So you're building a work capacity, but you're also focusing on speed. So if we know your event's 60 feet long, well, who's going to win it? The person who goes the fastest. Now you've got to be able to handle the big load, but you also got to be able to move fast. So we take sub-maximal loads for speed, and then you oscillate that like an A week and a B week. Now you're at a heavy load, just getting used to the heavier load and being able to grind into the heavier load. Now you've got to kind of balance that between what's going on in the gym as well, because you're pulling a deadlift, you're squatting, you're front squatting, you're overhead pressing. So it's just how do you manage all those stressors to peak an athlete ideally. Now, I think when I say ideally now, because like if you're peaking for one or two shows, like when I was competing, when I got a sponsorship, I competed in every show I could. Oh, that has a different piece of equipment. I'm going to go there because I've never done that event, so I'm going to just go do that contest.
Mm,
So I competed way too much. I mean, you couldn't do that with a load. We had lighter loads back then, so everything wasn't always super
yeah.
heavy. Um,
The
so
loads you guys are lift, like they're insane. Like
yeah, I mean,
1,000-pound farmer walks for, up a hill. It's like, what the fuck?
yeah, I mean that frame at the Arnold's is no joke. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a little over 900, but still, you got to pick something up and walk up an incline, and it's
Hmm.
only 35. It's only 35 feet. Yeah, but you're picking up and again, that frame wasn't that heavy in the beginning. It's just gotten heavier over the last 20 years because that first year they did that, it was not that heavy. It was like, I want to say it was 400 kilos, so 880. But still, 880 is a hell of. I mean, that's 440
I
pounds
mean,
per.
even just to do a frame deadlift at 880 is
Yeah,
crazy.
it's crazy, and the strength athletes have just strongman has totally changed because it's just a difference. We're attracting the better athletes now. Now, I
Yeah.
jokingly said back then, like, okay, because we weren't winning worlds, we weren't going to worlds, we weren't making the finals. And I'm like, I said to guys then back then, I said, I dedicated. I said, when America starts getting the better athletes into this sport, we will dominate the sport. Now, it used to be dominated by the Northern Europeans, and then the Eastern Bloc, and now you look at America's run has been quite significant. You know,
Hmm.
um, and then you look at, I mean, it's just changed a lot. So
You brought up a really interesting point, and one of the reasons I find strongman training to be so dynamic is because of the number of training variables involved.
yeah,
Right? You've still got to train to be strong, but then you have to implement a lot of skill work, and then you still have to be conditioned. What are some, let's say, core tenets or like first principles that you try to apply within a strongman program? Thinking like, a coach who's listening might not be exposed to the basics of strongman training. Like, how would you set up your week? How many training days roughly are we doing per week? What do those look like?
that all comes down to each client. So I kind of tailor that to what their lifestyle is like. Now, in a perfect world, I would say it's 4 times a week. You've
Okay.
got a dynamic lower body and a max effort lower body, and then a dynamic upper body and a max effort upper body. Um, I like to blend that together, trying to give, just kind of stealing from the conjugate system. So for me, Tuesdays in that format, Tuesday is a dynamic lower body.
Okay.
So I'm working the speed lifts. So come in, warm up, get a nice. I mean, my warm up. There's a general warm up. There's a lower back warm up. There's a readiness for that day. So I'm talking for myself now. Not every athlete has to do what I'm doing. I think as you age, for every decade past 20, you're adding more time to your warm up.
I
So
would agree with that wholeheartedly as someone approaching 40. Yes.
I warm up as probably more than I actually train at this point in my life. I still do it all, but it's like it just takes so much to get rolling. So get in self myofascial release. Some block zero is just some a senseless long
Oh
slow
fuck,
distance
man.
cardio.
I haven't heard this nomenclature in a long time, like block zero and all this stuff. Like,
I'm
so
old.
like, I love it. I love it. Well, that's
You
what I
know,
grew up on.
yeah, but then it's like so you get your lower back readiness because I've got some lower back issues, and I get some whatever my readiness is for getting ready for that day. So get that done. Then I hit some rate of force production because I want to flip my nervous system on. So that's where I
Hmm.
do the classical movements. So I'll clean or I'll snatch in some version, maybe with some throws. I love throws. Um,
Hmm.
you know, uh, Lateral throws, just working that lateral explosion, slams, tosses, build all that into rate of force production, and then really look at what's the lift of the day. Um, so I tend to deadlift and squat each workout.
Hmm.
And that's just a personal preference for me because I can just get it in. Then I only do one hard in a week, but like I'm always practicing the skill set. And I use a lot of, now it's like I've kind of graduated that whole dynamic effort, but now I'm using velocity based training to be my guide. So I'll do speed, strength, speed, and accelerative strength all in the same session, just
Okay.
looking at the numbers. And can I get the numbers on? Am I within the numbers where I need to be? So if you're looking at speed strength, that's anything over a meter per second peak velocity. And then I'm looking at my strength speed, which is zero point 0.8 to 1 meter per second for the
Hmm.
velocity. And then my accelerated strength is between 0.5 and 0.75. So, like yesterday, for example, I hit all my squats, and I went to accelerative strength. I was going to try to push a little harder. I got a good load. It was like 200 pounds of accommodating resistance from chain and 375. I did 5 doubles, all with like 2 minutes rest in between. So it's keeping the rest down.
Hmm.
I will say this. When I was younger, I rested less because I didn't need as much rest. Now I need a little bit more rest
Hmm.
to make sure the numbers are there. So my numbers stuck. I started to see the fall off because I had programmed 5 to 8 sets. Got to set 5. It was slow. 2 consecutive slow sets. Workout's done. Went on to deadlifts. Hit my deads. That was my workout. My auxiliary. I was supposed to do some auxiliary work yesterday, but I had a bunch of work to get done, so
Hmm.
I had to skip out on the work. So that Tuesday would be dynamic. Thursday would be max effort. So whatever my lift is, and I tend to rotate them. That's the nice thing with max effort and using that conjugate principle. Like I use like log, axle, dumbbell,
Yep.
and my overhead pressing is my paramount. I do a lot of inclines though because I find it crosses over.
For sure. Yeah.
I don't bench as much anymore because I've had some shoulder issues,
Hmm.
torn labrums, torn superior and infraspinatus. So I don't push that. Use dumbbells or I use like a neutral grip
Push-ups.
bar. I love chaos push-ups. I
Yeah,
just
me too.
bands and just that just wrecks me, And then Saturday would be like a max effort lift. So if 1 week would be a max squat, and the next week it's a max deadlift. And then the
Yeah.
auxiliary movements there are really just training the other stuff. Sunday's dynamic upper, and then I usually throw my events in there.
Interesting. All right. Like that's I'm thinking back to like how I was coaching one strongman guy for a while and it was pretty much exactly the same way that you set it up. One of the things that I think just in general, like whether you're training a power lifter or even a bodybuilder for that matter, I think we often forget that our bodies are meant to move through space in multiple planes.
Yep.
And in strongman, even though you are typically moving either straight up and down or straight forward and backward, there is still a lot of rotational component, especially when it comes to stability. So the fact that you're including rotation in terms of like med ball throws, different types of carries, things like that, to me speaks to like this evolution of the strongman athlete development because
Yes.
so many more qualities are required.
The one thing like within Parisi that Bill has gone into is the whole idea of training fascia. So I do, and again, built into there is like I do a lot of feeder work. So there's a lot of band work. There's a lot of, I use a tidal tank. So I'm doing
Okay.
movement in space with a tidal tank. So you have to force on activating your core. You're working those fascial slings. I do a lot of chops, a lot of banded stuff. So I'm doing a shit ton of, like, if you watch my workouts, like some people like, it's like, do you have like exercise ADD? Because like I might have a cluster of 3 movements, but I've built a cluster of, I mean, within that cluster of movements is it's ancillary work that I can work on internal and external rotation. I can work on, you know, things, shoulder work, getting my serratus to glide better, getting my subscap to glide better, just building that into the training in its while I'm training. Cause it's like, you got to have downtime. I just hate sitting around,
Hmm.
So if you look at like, I usually have like a cluster of 3 movements. So I'm always moving, so it also
Right.
increases work capacity. So I'm just punching more work in the same period of time, and I just find like for me, because the finite time in the gym, like here's my window, I got to get it
Right.
done and that's it. And otherwise I'm back to work, or like it used to be kids. I mean, my
Hmm.
kids are all grown and out of the house. But like when you got kids, like, I got up at 4 a.m. I was at the gym at 5. I was home by 7. So I can get kids on the bus, get them up, fed, get them on the bus, get back to work. Then you go to practice, and then you've got all your responsibilities as an adult, and then you got homework and shit. So I was very regimented. Like, here's my period of time. I'm going to punch in as much work as I can, and then I got to get the hell out because I got to live my life. I got real life skills.
That was actually going to be a question that I had because I knew that, like, anytime I have someone on the podcast who's competed in anything at a high level but has also had a family, the question then becomes, have you ever allowed your training to impact your family? And I think most people will claim that it didn't, but I think we've all been in places where it has.
It does. It does. Now, I will say this. I always put it at a time that tried to minimize the effect on my family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, I will say this. My kids all went to the gym with me, and I remember probably one of my favorite workouts of my life. It was 2000. It was the summer of 2003, and Nationals were in St. Louis. And I had my son, and Reese had no place to go. So I'm like, okay. I threw his bike and his skateboard and a bunch of toys and shit in the truck, and we drove to the training hall. And like, it's July. It's 85. It's like 95, 80, 88% humidity, 95 degrees. I'm in there in the training hall training, and my son's just skating up and down with his skateboard, his bike, and screaming at me, going, "Phil Fisher would do another rep, Dad. You got to do another rep, or Phil's gonna
That's
beat you." I'm like,
hilarious.
"Fuck me, man!" It was probably the most productive workout, but like my son's there, and he's just running around. He's like my best little coach, and just screaming at me. It's like, it was just, to me, that was a blast. And fortunately for me, I've got to compete with all my kids in something.
Really?
Yeah, and that was awesome. I've
That's
done
so cool.
Spartan runs, weightlifting. I did a CrossFit contest with my kids, and it's like, just, but doing it with them, and it became part of it. I mean, Reese became. It's funny because I went to World's Strongest Man this year, and like my kids are older, so I'm like, hey Reese, you want to go to World's Strongest Man with me?
Yeah.
And just hang out with Dad for a week. So I took my son. We had road trip to Myrtle Beach, and he got to hang out, and he had a coach's badge, and he's back there, and he's like, all these guys are like, dude, your dad's kind of a legend in this sport. Like, everyone knows me because I've been in it for so long. And it's like,
Yeah.
my son's walking around. It's like, yeah, like Magnus has been in my house, and Phil Fister, and all these, and Brian Shaw. It's like to him, it's like they're just normal dudes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he just has a different perspective. But then when he got there, it's like, holy shit, Dad, this was so. He's like, can I go back? Like, he doesn't even train. Like, all the guys, like, dude, you don't train. What the fuck? Your dad's a strongman. You don't even train. He goes, that's his gig, not mine. He chases women. So he's
Oh, dear.
24, so
Oh, dear.
we can let him do that. But he just had a blast, and I never tried to let it. I tried to include my kids on it,
Mm-hmm.
take my kids with me. But I think what you have to look at is, like, I think it's perspective.
Okay.
And my perspective was this: you know what, God, family, job, and strongman's not my job. Strongman's something I do, and my family was there, and the business was there. So taking care of that was the most important thing. Um, and that was my livelihood. And I never put it in front of strongman. Now, when strongman came time to train, it was fucking game on.
Right.
Like, it's balls out. If we're there for 3 hours, it's balls out for 3 hours. If I got 90 minutes, it's balls out for 90 minutes. Whatever it was, do it to the best of your ability. Now, once that's done, get back to work. Go back to what you should be doing. And I think so many people they get so dialed in, and they think about it and ruminate it all the time. Man, this is just some shit that I do. And I was proficient at it. I was good at it, and I'm blessed for that. But like, it meant more to me to go make a difference in my clients or my kids or the athletes that I trained. Strongman is just something I did. And even to this day, it's like, I love to train. I've jacked my knee up a little bit. So don't know if are my competitive days are over. Maybe. I still learned a lot. And like right now, I'm training around this injury, through it, getting therapy, learning more about peptides and stuff like that, just to try to heal it. So I think it's just making me a better coach.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think for athletes, don't put your athletic goals in front of what really matters. I've
That's
seen
a
too many
really
of my
important
friends
lesson.
lose their businesses and lose their wives because this became everything. This is just some shit you do. And you know what? In 5 years, when you're out of it, no one's going to give a fuck and no one's going to remember. I mean,
Hmm.
I remember all the world's strongest man because I know them all. But like, who won world's strongest man in 2014? I have no idea. Most people would not have any idea. I know who it was, but like, and if it was you, you know who it was. But when you're out of the sport for 5 years, no one cares.
I think that's a really insightful lesson because I think a lot of people who enter into strength sports, I will say more so than any other sport, do so from usually a place of insecurity, right? They started lifting because there was an insecurity there and they got the external validation that they were seeking from training or competing. And their identity is comprised of training and
Right.
competing. And I think I went through that for sure. Like I've been very open about, my transition and like the way I looked at training and the role it played in my life. And now, it's just something that I do, kind of like what you said. Right. So I'm going to train every day, right? Like I'm brushing my teeth at this point, but I'm going to prioritize the other things in my life that to me are more important. My wife, my work, the people that I have the pleasure of impacting. And I just think it's really important to hear that you can still be successful at a very, very high level. You can still be a good parent. You can still be a good partner, and you can have your cake and eat it too. But there are concessions to make, and that's where I wanted to ask the question of like, man, training at 4 a.m. Like you look at that and you're like, that's probably not the ideal time to train,
Definitely not.
but you
No, it's
fucking
not.
did it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, you look at, I don't know. I learned really early on. I remember I write everything down. It's like, I remember a Tommy Kono quote, and Tommy was an incredible weightlifter in the United States, one of the last to win Olympic gold. And it's like, the dimmest of pencil is better than the sharpest of memory. So I've literally written everything down since I started training. So, and then I ask, what's the key? And consistency is the key. So if you look at it, I kind of laugh. And because people ask, what's the key? What's the key to progress? I go, like being successful, like being consistent. So I just ask, how many works have you missed this month? How many have you missed this year? And to put it in perspective, I've missed 39 since 1980. That's 39 workouts since 1980 that were planned. I've missed 39 workouts. I mean, let that ruminate. 39, that's less than one a year.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm sick. Okay, you're sick, you can't train. If you're sick, if you're injured,
You can still
okay,
train.
you can still train. If you're hurt, you can still train. You train around it. You find something to train. I mean, Terry Hollins just tore his bicep. He's in the gym fucking training. There's a way around it. And I respect that because, you get an injury. Some people get injuries and they're done. And like I've had numerous injuries. It was an injury. Doesn't mean I can't train. Maybe I can't squat and leg press and deadlift, but God, you see me over there, it's like, Jesus, that dude's tearing up that adductor abductor machine. I'm doing something
Dude,
until I can do something.
I tore both my quads 23 weeks ago, and I trained 3 times a day while I was in a wheelchair in a bed.
Yeah. I mean, you find
I
a way
did
to
what I
train.
could.
You find a
Yeah.
way to train. Now, is that, and I look and you kind of hit on the head there. You look at the people that come into training and what traumas are they running from?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I have never had a problem sharing this. I mean, I was sexually molested as a child, you know, as a young child, 4 and 5. I mean, that weighs on me. That's a huge driver of mine. And then I was diagnosed learning disabled in first grade. So I got to go to special classes. So the names I was getting,
Of course.
So I think that kind of part of that made me who I am. Um, and so early on, those insecurities were taken out in the gym. Now it's like I've 20 years of counseling and
Yep.
self development and all that fun stuff. I know what it is. It's like, but man, I fell in love with training. Like I will literally train to the day I die because I love it. I love going to the gym. I love mastering myself. Okay, can I make myself do this? Now, as I've gotten older, I mean, I've got injuries. I've got little niggles here. I'm older. I'm losing. I'm not capable of doing the stuff that I could. But I look at most 56 years old. I'm doing way more than what they're doing. And okay, but again, I always compare to myself. I just need be the best version of Chad Coy can be today at 56.
Mm-hmm.
And I hit a press the other day. It was a 1.5 pound PR over my last one before that. That was celebration, man. That was
Hell
awesome.
yeah.
You know, in different strides. Like this year, like every year of my life since 1981, I've squatted 700 pounds or more. I mean, my knees kind of jacked up. I'm like, okay, I set the date, Sunday, which can be January 29th, which I think is Monday. Maybe it's a Monday. Um, I'm going to squat 700. Now it's going to be 500 pounds of the bands or 500 pounds of weight and 200 pounds of the chain, but I'm going to squat 700. And that day I'm going to go for a walk, and I'm going to walk a mile in less than 20 minutes, which that doesn't sound like hard, but dude, I had knee surgery. Walking hurts, but I can walk a mile. Just I have to stop and it hurts. But like I've set this goal that I'm going to walk that fucking mile straight, no stopping, even through the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because I think we have to have. You kind of got to push yourself. You got to find those limits, and I think most limitations are in your mind, not your body. Now,
There's
I got some limitations in my knee, and I know that. I don't have full flexion, full extension yet, but it's getting better. So I told my therapist this morning because I had therapy this morning at 7:30, and range of motion is almost back to where it should be.
Mhm.
The inflammation's down, the pain's down. My biggest thing is I just can't push it. That's what got me. I had surgery. I'm hitting the peptides. I ran the protocol that Chris Duffin wrote, and I loved it, and I was getting better. And then I hit a 605 double for a squat with no belt, RPE 7, felt great. Then I went to my belt squats, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to get some depth today. I'm going to go a little deeper. And then
Mhm.
I was that was right before I was getting ready to travel for about a month. So I jacked my knee up, and then I had to travel flying up and down and up and down, and then standing on my feet. It's like, and then I couldn't take all the stuff with me that I needed.
Right.
So it was very dumb of myself, but I had to push it to see if I could get ready for Worlds. Now I'm like, okay, I'm not going to push it. It doesn't feel right. I'm not pushing.
Mhm.
It doesn't feel right. I mean, there's issues in it. I just got to train around it. But again, putting that in perspective, can I go to work every day? Can I do my job every day? Can I help other people?
Yeah.
You know, but train training's just a part of my life. I love your idea. It's like brushing your teeth.
Mhm. Yeah.
What, you
I don't
quit
think
brushing
about
your
brushing my
teeth?
teeth. No.
I keep brushing my teeth. I have good oral hygiene, and training just becomes something that like I just intend on living as long. My dad's 90. My grandma lived at 94. You know, I want to live a long time. Now I don't know how many 270-pound dudes you see at 90, but I know that muscle atrophies, and I just have a lot of it. So maybe I'll atrophy down to 220. I don't know.
Maybe
We'll
it'll
see.
be like because you have so much muscle to atrophy, it'll just extend your runway.
Well, we can only hope.
We can only hope.
We can only hope.
Let's shift gears a little bit because I'd love to, we chatted very briefly before the podcast and I cut you off because I wanted to include this in it. Some lessons for younger coaches and kind of trends that you've seen over the years. What do you think in terms of coaching has allowed you to have the longevity in your career that you have had?
I think you got to love what you do.
Okay.
I mean, I don't go to work, man. I get to work. I mean, I've worn a suit. I've cinched that tie up. I've worked in the C-suite executive stuff. When I was in sales, I get to wear sweatpants every day, and I'm very comfortable. But I truly love what I do. I love when you see someone makes progress. I think you have to fall in love with the process, and consistently try to up your game. I mean, I look at from a certification standpoint. I got my first certification in 1989. I've gotten at least one certification a year every year since then, and that's a lot of money to spend on education. I'm like, yeah, but I read books, I listen to podcasts. I think it's number one is listening and then being able to disseminate the information. There's so much. I mean, the difference between 30 years ago, you got to have a textbook. You went to the library. Now you
Hmm.
can pop on and Google just about anything. But it's like, is that the shit you need to be seeing? Or now people's attention spans, like, I kind of love books.
Hmm.
I kind of love books because you got to sit down and read them.
Right.
Okay. Now I can go online and there's so much great information online, but it's these small snippets, but people can't, I just feel like people can't like dive into a subject and master it. Like I want to master shit, man. I want to be good at it. Now I laugh because I think sometimes I say I feel like an imposter a lot of times because like there's so many more intelligent people than me. And it's like, well, look at your progress and look at your athletes. I'm like, yeah. And I said, and what keeps me there is the consistent search for more knowledge and
Mm-hmm.
better understanding, and then using my own body as a lab.
Yep.
I say so. I think for young coaches, put your education first. I mean, that should be a block of your day. You should have an hour blocked off for nothing but education. And if you're not doing that, you're leaving a lot on the table because, your own personal knowledge is great, but then have a podcast, get a book. I mean, I try to go through 4 books. I used to go through 4 books a month. I'm down to about two now. I do Audible and I read. So like right now I'm rereading The Anatomy of Speed. But again, I reread a lot of stuff. Like, I go through the same, I'm a master coach. I teach the same certification and have for
Right.
100 times, but I literally learn something every time I go on the road because a young coach, I'm old and I see it a certain way, and a young coach sees it a little different. I'm like, wow, that's a great coaching cue. I'm going to
Yep.
steal that. So if you look in our Parisi Speed School education, most of the upgrades come from master coaches who learned something from a young coach that we hadn't seen before.
Yep.
Or like as a strongman athlete, like if I see a new way to cheat, because everyone's cheating, and like there's a lot of rules in strongman that have my name on it because that was in the rules, so I just bent the rule a little bit,
Right.
and that becomes a new rule over time. But like, you're always looking for innovative ways. I think you have to be innovative, but then bringing that back in full circle, be a master of the basics.
Yep.
You have to master the basics. I think in sports and whatever we're doing, the people that master the basics and are savagely executing the basics are the ones who are very successful. So when I look
Yeah.
at, people ask me, what drug should I be taking? Like, how many hours are you sleeping? What's your food look like? You're on a dirty bulk, so you eat out 3 times a day. You're 40% body fat. You don't need to be on a dirty bulk. You're fat. I'm sorry, I just kind of call it like it is.
Yeah.
But let's dial that nutrition. Let's get healthier. At the end of
Yep.
the day, like your kids aren't going to give a fuck that you're world's strongest man.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Shaw's a good friend of mine. His 2 sons could care less if dad's world's strongest man or strongest man on earth or the best arm wrestler ever. They just love the fact that he comes home. And that's the way my kids were. I was the greatest dad in the world. I was like fucking Superman or Captain America, but
You just
what,
show up.
but be there, be present. And I think that's what the young coaches, be there and be present. Put your fucking phone down. That's a personal pet peeve. If you're a coach and you have a phone in your hand and you're using it for work, maybe you're shooting a video so you can give feedback to the athlete, that's fine. But if you're over there doing your social media while you're in the middle of a session with your client, if it were me and you're in my facility, like I just walk up to my coach like, what you got? And you're not to be on your phone, just be present and be there
Yep.
for your client. They'll appreciate it. And you know what? I laugh because my longest standing client, I started training in 1995. He's still my client.
That's
30 years
amazing.
later, and for 20 years, I did him in person. Now for 10 years, I've done him online,
Mm-hmm.
Now he's older than me, but he hates train heroics. He prefers Excel spreadsheets because that's just him.
I have one of those too. I have an older gentleman who I train. He refuses to use our app.
Right. But I just think for the most part, coaches master the basics, continually search learning and becoming better. And I think then lastly, I think for all coaches, you need to compete at least once a year in something. So what it's
Ah.
like. I think you know what it's like to focus and dedicate for a goal. Because if your clients are training for a goal, but you haven't done that in a while. Personally, I watch it, and I watch a lot of sports coaches. They or people bring their kids like, I want you to crush my kid. He should be puking every workout. I'm like, that just makes me an asshole. It doesn't make me a good coach.
If you want that, go somewhere else.
Yeah. I'm all about teaching grit, and that just takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, like you had talked about loaded carries and moving, there's just something about like sandbag carries and sled pushes that you just got to kind of nut up and do it because it sucks. But you've got to do it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever the time limit is. But you just got to go out there and do it.
Absolutely.
I love bikes. I watched one of your shorts this morning when you sent me the
Mm-hmm.
link, and it was like, how do you tell people what's hard? Well, you put them on a fucking echo bike and you go, you're going to bike a half mile as hard as you can. I want it, and I want it under a minute. That's
Hmm.
hard. That's a hard set. Now you go over, was your that squat set, was that hard like the bike? No. Well, then it wasn't hard enough, you know?
I was actually with, so when I was training this morning, there was a younger gentleman doing leg press, and he did a set. And I said, "You got another set?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Cool, do 30 reps." He was like, "What? I only got 10 the last one." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, you're going to do 30 reps." He's like, "I'll try, man." I'm like, "Cool, I'll spot you." He did 31.
Yeah.
I'm like, "So was your 10 rep set actually effective?" And he was like, "No, man, I had a lot to learn." I'm like, "Cool, happy to help." And then I went on with my workout, and he came up to me afterwards. He's like, "You know what? Like that showed me something." And
Right.
I think those little lessons, I joke that I'm the old guy at the gym, but I'm legitimately the old guy at the gym now. Um, and I'm happy to pass along those lessons because
Well,
I had those lessons passed along to me.
yeah, someone that you have to understand what hard is. I mean, when you do again, the old Randy Strawson 20 rep breathing squats, when you take a 20 rep set of, you take your 10 RM and you make it 20 reps, and then you lay on the floor and vomit for 3 minutes, that's fucking hard work.
That's
Now,
RPE 10.
yeah, now when you're looking, what's an RPE 10 in a big lift, because you've done another one. No. Well, then that's fucking RPE 10. Like if you hit failure, you're there. But I think so many people are scared of failure that they've never trained there. And I think you have to have done a few sets to failure in your life to know where that's at. And that's where I think again for athletes, just teaching them grit, and that's where you build it at the very end of the workout that you're just there's an ending, so they have hope.
Mm-hmm.
If you start out set one of an hour workout and you crush them, and they know they've got 59 more minutes, you broke them. Now
Yeah.
we do a lot of at Parisi in Como. We did a ton of work with like the Marine Corps recruits and Air Force recruits and stuff. So that's different. Like when they come in and say, "Can you do a DI? Can you play a DI today for an hour?" Well, yeah, I can crush dudes for an hour,
Mm-hmm.
but they know it's an hour. Now,
Yeah.
if you knew that that
Everything
was going to
ends.
happen for the next 13 hours at boot camp, you might have a different thought process. So it's just
Yeah.
kids aren't as tough as they once were. I
I
mean,
think they're just, I think the mentality is different. I think they don't have to be as tough. So the
right,
impetus to actually build toughness isn't there.
right.
But I think the ones that are having success are the ones that have an influence in their life who has shown them the benefits of that grit. And I think yourself, other coaches like you who work with young populations, those college strength coaches, those high school strength coaches, there are a lot of them doing a fantastic job. And there are
I
also a lot of ones who are missing the boat, but we'll leave that like that.
I think for the majority, they're doing a better job than they're not, because I think
Yeah,
your strength coach spends more time with you than your position coach or your head coach.
agreed.
And if you've got honestly, if in my opinion, if you've got a great strength coach, you can have a great program. I think a strength coach at the high school level. I mean, you look at in Indiana, Brownsburg High School. Brian Neese is their head strength coach. He's a dear friend of mine, one of my best friends. America's Strongest Man back in '99, and went to Worlds. But you know what? Their program, it's just a bunch of middle class kids working hard, starting in sixth grade, and they
Hmm.
just won the 6A football championship in Indiana, um,
Nice.
and it's just a bunch of normal kids that have been in the weight room banging, man. Just they go in at sixth grade, or they learn, and like I've done a lot of coaching for Brian, and they're just great kids. They're very disciplined, so you just teach them stuff, and like we use I've got the four pillars that I profess to all my coaches, which is really for me, it's respect, coachability, work ethic, and effort. And I think the athlete themselves and or the coach, you control those. So respect is simple. It's yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, please, ma'am, thank you. That's how every sentence should start. Coachability is just this ability to listen, just listen. Work ethic, and I tell people, be the first one in, be the last one out. Your coach, your teammates, your boss, your teacher, they're all going to know that. And then lastly is effort. You control it. And I'm not the coach that says, give me 110% because that's a crock of shit. You know, give me everything you've got. Now,
Hmm.
at the end of the workout, there's 40% in the tank. I want all of it.
Hmm.
Once I get my kids to understand, like, if I leave it all out on the field, I might lose. but I'll have no regrets. And I'd
You'd
rather
be proud.
lose and learn, but have no regrets. There's plenty of kids that go out there and it's like they just kind of quit. And I've watched my own athletes quit on occasion. And it comes back, how do you learn from that? How do you get better from that? And I think that's what we have to continuously teach is losing is not bad unless you don't learn from it. And
I love
I
that.
make my kids like, okay, why did you lose? Why did number one, when we win, we're humble and grateful and we're congratulatory. We thank our opponent. We do that every time we train. And then when you lose, my first question is, no, Paul, what could you have done better?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to diagnose your own performance instead of saying, it was the refs, it was the fans, it was the field, it was like whatever. You can blame whatever you want, but at the end of the day, you lost. Why? And when we get kids to actually start asking themselves the question why, and they know the answer, I didn't put forth enough effort. My kids, well, I didn't change direction. My hockey stops weren't crisp. In my acceleration, I was standing up. Okay, I just flat out didn't put the effort. Okay, well, Paul, can you fix that?
Yep.
Yeah, and like last weekend, Austin Ham, he's one of my kids. He was in 11th place at OSG out of 50. The top 10 go on. He's 2 points out. We thought he made it. We find out he didn't make it. And it was like, fuck, I mean, my heart broke
Mm-hmm.
to be that close. And we're sitting there talking, and a fan in the stands took a video of it. So we got a video of it. I actually posted it up, and it was just like, your prep was perfect. You laid it on the line. You have no regrets. You came out here, but can we learn from it? That was my number one question. Can we learn from it? His prep was great. His execution was great. They couldn't have done anything better, but he came up short.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the fire for next year. I
Absolutely.
tell you, next year he's probably kicking that door in because he's fired up. Like he came back, he's like, you know what? I can take time, take as much time as you want. We'll get back to work when you're ready. He's like, I'm ready to go now. So it's a week later, he's back in the gym. He's back
Yep.
trying. Let's make progress. And I think that's what I really enjoy is that process with the athletes that they start to get it.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally within their grasp of everything they do. Your nutrition, your sleep, you run all that. You can't blame. You got shitty genetics. I don't know, maybe, but
It's extreme ownership. You have to own every aspect of the process, and I love that. Um, Chad, I have two more questions for you. The first one is if there was one lesson that you could pass on, whether to the audience, so mostly coaches, one thing that you would pass on, what would it be?
love the process.
I love
Just
that.
love the process, man. Just dive into the process. Keep notes. I laugh because I'm still very visceral. I've
Mm.
literally kept a training journal since 1980. Now, when my mom died and we moved all of her stuff out, I had so much shit and I didn't want to carry them, so I burnt all my training journals about 5 years ago. So I should have probably kept them, but I just in my mind at the time, my mom's dead. I'm getting rid of the house. This is just something I got rid of and just shed it off from the past. But like, just take the process and love the process. And in the process of loving the process, love your people. Just love on your people. Care about them. I mean, it's amazing. People, when they're always going to remember. I mean, again, maybe they forget what I said or what I taught, but they remember how you make them feel. And if you empower your kids or your adults and you make them feel good, this you don't know about their day. I always say this: you don't know where that kid's day's at. You don't know where that adult's life's at. They come in there with you, and I want the hour with me to be the best hour of their day. And
Yeah,
if I can put a smile on their face and get some progress, and they can get somewhere, they've accomplished something. And I think as a coach, if you just love your people and love the process of loving your people, you're gonna be successful. You're going to make the money you want. If you're good at something, you make money, you
absolutely.
know, and if you're not making money, it's probably an indicator that you're not very good at what you do. Maybe you should find a new profession. So I say this to everyone,
Tough
dude,
lesson.
if you're not 100% into this, if you're not into your client, if you're just there for the paycheck, find another fucking profession because don't ruin mine. And when I say it, I'm a coach. Some people, you're a personal trainer. I'm a coach. Dogs have trainers, horses have trainers, people have coaches. I coach, and that's it. And I think there's a distinct difference there. And there's professionals out there that would argue with me. I'm a coach. I've been a coach for a long time. you know what? And my coaching doesn't stop at the gym. It
Yep.
stops when the project's done. So I spend a lot of time with my athletes talking to them about like what's like for some of my pro guys, what's life after strongman?
Hmm.
What's life going to be after strongman? Because buddy, it's not going to last forever. I know you're young and invincible right now, but that you're one injury away. Like Trey went down with a torn Achilles. I go, you're one injury away from being done.
Yep.
Now he's came back. He had a great second half of the season this year. Had fourth at the strongest man on earth and 2 seconds at Giants Live, and he's going back to the Arnold's. But again, for him, it's like, what's life after strongman? And now you look, he's building a gym.
Hmm.
He's going to build himself a gym in his town where I think he can really monetize that and make money. You know, I laugh because if you look at Brian Shaw, I mean, I met Brian when he was a kid,
Hmm.
and he came to my gym in 2014 for one of our shows, and we were talking at the time. And he's like, I think I'm going to do this YouTube thing, and I'm like, who the hell would sit around watching videos on YouTube? That's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. No one, you can't make
Dude,
money that way.
he crushes it.
Oh my god! And I'm like this, so it's funny because we're at the one of the Shaw Classics a couple of years ago when we were at Estes Park, and a couple of my guys were there. And he goes, "Yeah, Chad told me I'd never make money unless you own a gym or you do coaching or something." He goes, "But I've parlayed." He goes, "That kind of set in my crawl," and I was like, I was happy to be, and I told Brian, very happy to be wrong,
Hmm.
you know, because he's actually done it. And like I'm old, and at the time I didn't have the vision, and I look at it now, it's like, I mean, like your business and guys who are online, like I just don't have that. That's not me.
Hmm.
Just people ask, why don't you have a YouTube page? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? It's like, that's not me, man. I'm more worried about the people I'm coaching than putting out content.
That's my
Maybe
least
that,
favorite part of my job. My least favorite part of my job is the online stuff. I love the people. The people is why I do what I do.
yeah. Again, there you go. For all you young coaches, you just heard Paul say it. I said it. It's about the people that you're coaching and caring about them and loving them and producing results for them. And that's what's going to grow your business. I've got a waiting list of 20 people wanting me to train them online. Like, guys, I cannot give you the service that you deserve. So I pass them to other coaches that are really good that have that ability. I just have a finite ability to do what I do, to continue to do what I do for Parisi, because I've got a mission there. So I want to complete that mission at the same time. The strength captain is kind of my side gig, but not my side gig, if you know what I mean. I just love
Yeah.
it.
The last question I have for you is, who's one person that you think would be a great interview on the podcast? But the caveat is you have to help me get them on the podcast.
God, I've got so many.
Give me two.
What are you looking for?
People who you think do a great job for their people.
Uh, well, I mean, Bill Parisi would be a great one, and he can talk fascia. He can talk sports performance better than I can. Joe Ken, who's
Okay, yes. I have a mutual
Joe's a
connection with
good
Joe
friend of
Kent.
mine. I could text Joe easily. Nathan
Okay.
Payton, another one. I think Nathan is fucking brilliant. Now, again, for my mentorship, I hired Nathan as my coach and also as my mentor. Um, Learned so much from him about insulin management and how to manipulate nutrition to facilitate muscle gain. You know, because I think a lot of people leave loads on the table with their nutrition because, oh, I need to take this drug or this drug. No, you don't need to take drugs.
You
You
don't.
need to train hard and you need to eat right, and then you need to
Yeah.
sleep. So those would be the three I would look at
We'll be in touch.
that are
I'll
I think the most impactful. I mean, Joe Ken I can't speak enough about Joe Ken. I mean,
Joe
again,
wishes me happy birthday every year, and I've met him once.
Joe's a good dude.
That speaks to
Ed
his character to me. Like,
Ed Cohn.
I had Ed. I had Ed already.
Ed is incredible. I'd say Brian Shaw, but I don't know if how his schedule's crazy busy.
I doubt he would do my little podcast, but it's all good. Chad, I do want to be mindful of your time since you said you had another appointment. Thank you so much for joining me. I will have links to where everyone can find you in the show notes. Thank you so much again. And hopefully we can maintain our connection and we'll have you
Thank
on
you for
again in
having
the
me.
future.
Are you going to go to Arnold?
This year, maybe. I go every year. This year, my wife and I are actually in the process of immigrating to the US.
Oh
So
wow.
part of that process is once you do your interview, they withhold your passport for a period of time until they
Okay.
issue the visa. So that interview is happening in February. So if we don't get our passports back, we won't be able to go. But I have a client who competes at the Arnold every year. So
Well, if you're there, let's break some bread. We'll grab Anthony
100%.
because he lives there, so
Absolutely, man.
he,
Chad, thank you so much.
he knows where all the cool places to eat are at too. So,
Oh, that's very important.
all right. Hey,
Chad, thanks
thanks,
so
dude.
much. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on the next one.